Hey everybody, it's Chris, Hannah, and Mike with Life 180 Turnkey Real Estate. And for this video, I want to ask Mike, what are the top 3 things to consider when you're looking at getting into a market for a turnkey property?
Absolutely. And you really have to be careful to do these 3 things in the right order, because if you go to number 3 first, like most people do,
Sure.
You're setting yourself up for failure.
Okay.
So number 1 thing you got to look at is, basically, is this market, is it landlord friendly or tenant friendly? And what I mean by that is there's certain markets, I'll use California as one of the worst examples of places to invest, buy and hold properties. You can actually, somebody could live in your property for, actually I'm going to give, one of my friends owned a property where the tenant didn't pay for 18 months and they couldn't get that tenant out of the house.
Wait, 18 months?
18 months, yes.
Wow, that could sink a landlord.
Absolutely. Imagine you got a mortgage payment, you got property taxes, you got insurance, and you've got no revenue.
Probably legal fees,
Unreal.
personnel.
And legal fees, right. And
Wow.
it's really stressful, of course, when you know that person is in there, probably not taking care of your property either.
Yeah.
It's extra
Right.
stressful.
Yeah.
So the number 1 thing you have to look at before you look at anything, before you look at numbers, is how easy is it or difficult is it to get rid of a bad tenant?
Wow. Okay.
And Atlanta's my personal favorite market there. We usually can get rid of a bad tenant within 3 weeks. So potentially you could have that home back on the market and have another tenant in place shortly after your tenant defaults. Of course, we try to work with the tenant to work things out, but in theory you can do that. So that's the number 1 thing, and it's the most important thing to look at first. The second most important thing is you've got to look at appreciation. And if you skip this step, then you might be able to find a market where you're getting good cash flow, but if that property never goes up in value, you're going to keep going to your job and trading time for money in order to get more money to buy more properties.
Sure.
If that property goes up, the best way to build a portfolio is the properties you buy today. As they appreciate, you're able to sell them, take that cash, and maybe turn one property into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, etc.
Okay.
Exactly.
Leverage.
Absolutely. You can compound your portfolio.
Yeah.
And so the things that cause appreciation are very simple supply and demand principles. If you have a lot of people moving to a certain city, then there's a pretty good chance there's going to be more demand on the real estate and the prices are going to go up. If people are moving away, then the property values are probably going to go down. And so we see a lot of people that look strictly at how much rent am I going to get versus how much do I have to pay for the property. And quite often they make the big mistake of going somewhere where properties are really cheap. And so I'll use Detroit as an example. Well, I could buy this home for $30,000. It gives me $1,000 a month rent. Well, on paper that looks phenomenal.
Right.
But if your tenant doesn't have a job, you're not going to get very many months worth of rent. And so you're going to have a very high vacancy rate, and you tend to get very high repair bills because these people aren't cleaning up on their way out, believe it or not, when you evict them. So
they don't leave you love notes?
Not very often, no. Sometimes they leave you stolen cars in the driveway, and actually had that happen, but that's another story for another day. And I didn't get to keep the cars, so that sucked. But anyway.
So unfair.
Yes, exactly. So the other things that will obviously create the appreciation is when you have jobs being created, people will move in search of employment. And so Atlanta, not only are they landlord friendly, but they're also very business friendly, meaning that they give a lot of incentives for businesses to have their offices there, knowing that it's going to create a lot of jobs, and knowing that they can tax the employees to death instead of the corporations. So Atlanta, head office to Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, which owns CNN, Home Depot, Delta Airlines, Georgia Pacific Paper. The list goes on and on and on of companies that have their head offices in Atlanta. And there's a whole bunch of companies that maybe don't have their head office there, but they have an office and a presence in Atlanta. So lots of job creation, lots of people heading that direction. And then we have people in general heading from the north, they're heading south, especially our baby boomers. Nobody's waking up in Florida or Atlanta or anywhere in the south saying, I think we should move to Buffalo, New York today. Nobody is, well, you guys are from Vermont. We're in Phoenix right now.
And Phoenix,
I think that says so. I'm from Canada. I'm not hanging out.
Sir.
That's right. I'm not hanging out in Canada.
You're not hanging in Canada.
That's
You're
right.
kicking it with us
So,
in the sunshine.
Right. So there's a definite trend. And so if you're ahead of that curve, if you can be there before that trend becomes more prevalent, that's where the money is. So that's our number 2 thing, is appreciation. The number 3 thing is what everybody goes to first, and that's looking at, I get this house for $30,000 and it gives me this much rent. They're looking at their cash on cash returns, which is great, but if you don't have those other 2 things intact, if you're picking the wrong market and it's not landlord friendly and it's never going to go up, you might be able to salvage a little bit of money here and there, but in the long run, you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you have all three in that order. That's where you're going to create wealth. That's where eventually you can stop trading time for money, get away from your job. So not just have the money freedom, but the time freedom, and that's really the key.
And if you don't have 1 and 2 first, it's smoke and mirrors for the third one.
Absolutely.
Ultimately,
The third one's irrelevant. If you buy a home in California, and even if it gave you $1 million a month rent, if you can't get that rent because the people know how to work the system, I swear there's like courses in markets where it's tenant friendly on how to be a bad tenant, how not to pay rent, because
take advantage of
everybody knows the system.
They all learn from each other.
Exactly. If they know they can go to court and they can stall, they're not really motivated to make a payment to you.
Sure.
If they know that, hey, I'm going to get kicked out in 3 weeks, they are going to do everything in their power to pay you as soon as possible before you give them that notice that you're being evicted.
So just avoid that environment altogether.
Avoid it altogether.
Yep. No, that makes
Save
sense.
yourself all the stress.
That makes sense. Well, so you heard it there. So those are the top 3 things that you need to consider when looking at, I would say, real estate in general, not just turnkey real estate. Whether you're looking to do this on your own, I would say real estate in general, those are the top 3 things to think about. So I hope that helps. I hope it makes sense. Go ahead and make sure you click the subscribe button if you're finding this information valuable. Click the bell, that way you get notified with every video that we release, as we are releasing a lot of content around cash flow real estate. So until next time, we'll talk to you soon.